Good afternoon, all. Rural distribution, and just a addition to what Advant mentioned, we'll not just talk about fintech, we'll talk about rural distribution in general. In fact, one of the objectives personally for me is also to try and see how they can be cross learning, because that's I think what is something which is unique about the panel. We have experts who have understanding of product, FMCG, consumer goods, public goods, financial services across the sector, and I think that's what's interesting for me, that there is likely to be a lot of cross learning when we are talking about selling in rural and distribution specifically in rural areas. How can there be cross learning, and how can we learn from the mistakes and what has worked, what hasn't worked? So I think that's fundamentally the objective, at least for me. So I think the way we are going to structure it, I have a few questions, a few common sort of questions that I'll address to all of you. I have one or two specific questions, right, based on your specific experiences. Maybe this will take about 30-35 minutes or so, and then we can open it up for Q&A. So I think if how we could start is, if I would request each of you to really talk about what rural distribution and selling to the next 500 million essentially means to you in your context, right? Maybe Amrendra, if you can start from you. What is rural distribution for you? What's the challenge? So that everybody, the house, has a good understanding of what you are really doing and what the challenge is, and then I'll come to the questions.
Sure. So thank you for inviting here. I mean, it's always a privilege to be here at IIMA campus. I mean, admission तो हो नहीं पाया, so इधर आने का मौका मिलता है तो अपन छोड़ते नहीं है. So I'll take a minute what DeHaat does actually. So it's like end-to-end services to the farmer, right from what to grow, how to grow, and then where to sell. So our journey starts from soil test, then all agri inputs that includes seeds, crop care, nutrition, and then very personalized advisory. We are able to provide customized and personalized advisory to each and every farmer. I mean, how it's growing, how is the soil and everything. And then financial services that includes financing and insurance as well. And last but not least is the market produce we procure from the farmers. This is what it's like a full stack model. So challenges, what we feel is like, I mean, in agriculture, every village is like a different country. In fact, I mean, in the same village, we have a different set of farmers, right? Someone has, I mean, if you talk, just take an example of in a village, if there are 100 farmers, top 20 can manage everything for their needs. Next 40% can manage half of their things, and then rest 50s are dependent upon those 60. So for us, we always see like, and then the soil, climate, and everything changes. I mean, so for us, we always believe that to solve this, how you can demonstrate, I mean, that something is working on the ground. So we took an approach of physical model. So we have like a hub and a spoke model. So we have a physical process, but we have a digital system to enable those physical processes. So we always believe that we have to showcase. I mean, similar to like a medicine, where basically it has, if somewhere has disease, then it has to impact that. Similarly, on the agri side, we say that whatever you were suggesting, that should have some impact. Maybe the cost of production has to come, production has to rise, or the better quality of the produce. So these are the subtle things we always demonstrate on the ground, and then we took the learning and then disseminate through digital channel to the larger mass. So first understanding that it's working on the ground and its efficiency, it's impactful, and then if that comes, then we start basically percolating to the other farmers.
So that's quite a handful. You are doing multiple things. Do you also have feet on street on ground to be able to do it? And at what level do they operate? Are they at a block level, district level? How does it work?
Yeah, so our system is like, we call it as a hub and spoke model. So district level, we set up our hub, and it's a team of 7 to 10 people, and out of those 10, 6-7 are core agronomists who basically understand the crop, who understand those practices. So that is where we always became, when we have to demonstrate it. I think this is where the fundamental is very very clear, that वो काम करना चाहिए. प्रोडक्ट अगर प्रोडक्ट और सर्विसेज अगर उसके काम का नहीं है, तो फिर आप कुछ भी कर पाए, तो दैट इज नॉट गोइंग टू वर्क. सो understanding that, so we have feet on the ground, sir, to demonstrate basically that some product or services that is working, and then basically.
Okay, so fairly intense local ecosystem based, feet on ground, but tech enabled, yeah, because that's important. That's how you scale up. That sort of a model. Let's move ahead. Kishore, what does rural distribution mean for you guys? And I think the specific question that I would like to ask is, Amazon would obviously have a very standard model going across countries, but what is the McAloo burger moment for you, right? How do you kind of sort of customize for India to reach out to the next 500 million?
So I would go back to 2011 when I started my journey with Amazon. And that was a time when we used to pay something called additional service charges or extra delivery charges. Beyond the 2000 pin codes, everything was additional service charges. Madurai was called rural, right? And it just took 10 years for various players and incumbents and everyone else to redefine what is rural. Today, customer buying power, yeah, more or less the same or even better at times, the discretionary incomes. And second, thanks to all of the fintech revolution, payment modes are very easy. Otherwise, COD was the only way to get it, or even cash. And the third piece for me is address and address tech, which is customer locations. Thanks to all the geocoding and the mobile phone trajectory that has gone, and it's become very easy for us to capture the geocodes as well. And same thing with respect to the last mile tech. There was a time when companies like the DHLs and others used to give handheld devices all the way. That itself was the biggest cost in rural. You couldn't even afford one handheld device per delivery partner because that was very costly. So all of those, thanks to technological interventions, they have become cheaper and cheaper. So they went out of the critical path. Now I will play three lenses. Frankly, I don't see anything defined as rural unless you're going to some remote wetlands in West Bengal or somewhere where actually going is a problem, or further up north where you're actually reaching out to up on a hill and going to a customer there. But otherwise, the three standard lenses that we use everywhere, one is selection, pricing, and speed, right? Speed, selection, and pricing. So that's what people need to think for that customer base. One, because their perception of selection is not the same as your used customers or very well-known customers in urban or semi-urban. Number two, the speeds are difficult. Why? Not because they are remote, but because middle mile is costly. So in fact, in rural distribution, last mile is not as costly as in Bangalore or Delhi or Bombay. But the middle mile, where you make the milk runs to the places where we need to connect to the delivery locations, are actually leaner, and hence they add up to the cost. And the third piece with respect to pricing, again, what sells and at what price bands it sells is one aspect. But how do you build the wallet? How do you build the basket of what you sell rural is the core. In fact, if you ask any of the FMCG veterans or giants, they would come back and say why all of the FMCG companies only distribute with direct distribution till semi-urban or urban areas. Because beyond that, the trick of building that wallet is with still people who are naively developing
the
it.
local wholesalers.
Yeah. So how do you get that there so that for every cubic feet kilogram, you can get the right GMS that can actually afford that last mile distance is the core for me in terms of retailing. Beyond that, if you go back to the second lens, which is distribution, first mile, middle mile, last mile. Yes, last mile is difficult to set up, but once set up, it works well. Attrition levels are lower than urban. Like no one steals your delivery partners overnight on a IPL match, right? Which actually happens in all the urban areas. The real estate is really, comparatively pretty easy. But the costlier part is making sure your milk runs are going there affordably and you are able to get that cost in, right? So that's where the economics play around with. And the third lens that we look at is customer experience. So the first part is knowing where the customer is. Thanks to a lot of things, it has become easier to know the geocodes. Even, mandir ke piche, ped ke samne kind of addresses are geocoded. Because first time you deliver, where the customer is, right? It doesn't matter. So most likely you'll tell the customer, hey, is this your location? But the bigger part is how do you serve the customer, right? With a platform that is very, or marketplace that is very generic, to say, there were cases when we used to see a lot of drop-offs in customer calls from remote locations, only because they will wait to hear to someone who sounds like they can speak Hindi, right? Otherwise, they'll drop it off. We call it as 10-second blank calls. And once they get it, they'll tell you what their problem is, and then you service that. correct? So that part of telling the customer, hey, when something goes wrong, we manage it. Communicating with the customer, your standard WhatsApp messages, SMSs have to be vernacularized or even made easily or intuitively understood. Otherwise, people will call you as soon as you send your package is ready for shipping message, because they don't understand the message. They just call to understand, hey, what are you telling me, correct? So knowing this piece of customer communication, managing exceptions is a third lens that I would put this in.
Just an add-on, I remember around 2000, again, 11, 12, when rural was really remote. At that point of time, Amazon was doing pickups in villages and with local kirana. So is that still there, or are you able to deliver down to the doorstep now?
So maybe it was never meant to be a pickup. A pickup model actually was very pilot mode
was piloted,
experiment,
yeah.
right? We also had assisted buying, which is equivalent to the kinds of Vakarangi things that you would have seen. But now actually the consumer, more or less in T26 locations, have become very educated. You don't need to worry about it.
Okay.
What changed from then to now is we used to depend quite a bit on, say, India Post, and hence make it only prepaid. But now up to 14,000, 15,000 postcodes, we're having our own network. And thanks to a few other partners, they are able to reach the 19,000 postcodes as well. So that has changed.
So essentially what you are suggesting is that the tech which is available right now, GPS, GIS, etc., wallets, financial services, etc., you can essentially not make significant changes to your model. It's just the delivery times and the characteristic of the basket, etc., which is different, but the model remains the same. For Amazon, there's not been too much of improvisation that you have to do to reach to the last mile.
In fact, improvisation happened reverse. So we started packaging for everyone. Now in urban, we go with zero packaging because we know that it touches just one point.
Great.
But in rural, we still need to get that packaging right. So
sure, great. Moving on to you, Sunil. We go a long way back. I remember 2010 or 11, we were trying to sell insurance through Kirana outlets in rural Rajasthan. So what's rural distribution for you, more from a financial services lens?
Yeah, thanks, Chintan, for inviting me. And I would request those who are standing, because we are sitting here, there are seats on this side. You may come that side, and there is enough space, and we can remove some of the bags which are there. I think they are not meant for. So all of you can actually sit. So I think, talking about financial services, let me take you back to 2014-15. That's the time India had about 30% to 35% penetration of bank accounts. And PM came up with a Jan Dhan Yojana just to bank the unbanked. Now that typically meant, generally, प्यासा कुएं के पास जाता है, यहाँ पे कुआं प्यासे के पास जा रहा था. So what exactly happened was that bank branch people went to villages, opened the account and came back. So you had a great situation that you have several 100 million account open, but वो प्यासा तो वहाँ प्यासा ही रह गया, कुआं तो वापस अपने जगह पे आ गया. So the whole instrument to service that was built in 2005 was what is called as business correspondent to bank. And the business correspondent to bank was meant for branchless banking, which using core banking connectivity really revolutionized, especially after demonetization, that you had now today about 20 lakh active business correspondent across the country. And they do almost, I mean, to give you some statistics, today we have in the country 2.6 lakh ATMs. 2.6 lakhs ATM, 50% are what is called on-site ATM, which means they are attached to the bank branch. So off-site ATMs are 1.3 lakh. Out of 1.3 lakh, almost 60,000 are only in the rural areas. Balance are in the metros and class A cities. So you have 6.5 lakh villages serviced by 60,000 ATMs. That's how it is. Now you will have now 20 lakh manual ATM, your human ATMs. And between these 2.6 lakh ATMs, every month there is 2 lakh crore rupees worth of cash withdrawal happening. Between these 20 lakh business correspondent, there is about 30 to 40,000 rupees, not 30, 70,000 crore worth of cash withdrawal happens through these business correspondents. So it has actually brought, what it actually built was that today you have 500 million Jan Dhan accounts. These 500 million Jan Dhan accounts have 2.4 lakh crore balances. Now these 2.4 lakh crore balances are being built by servicing them through these business correspondents. Otherwise, these balances would not have been there. So in terms of true financial inclusion, starting with bank account and then with savings, then comes the financial inclusion 2.0, which is credit and insurance and all the services. The basic building block was built in the last 10 years through these correspondent, and the distribution here, the raw material, like Amrendra mentioned, goods for raw material for financial services is cash. And you will not believe, we use the same FMCG distributor. He is distributing cash instead of Haldiram mixture. So he is giving cash and he is distributing to these villagers, the BC agents, and the entire distribution is real time, IT enabled. There is not a single manual work being done there. So that's what this entire distribution for the next, in fact, it is for the next 500 million.
Right,
Thank
right.
you.
The only thing I remember we discussed, and that's our experience of doing pilots 10, 15 years back, was that the Kirana outlet can do some financial services, which doesn't require too much of a sales push, because he doesn't want to move out of his, safe zone. So some things can be done effectively, but some others may not be able to.
So yeah, you brought a very good point. The Jan Dhan accounts were called no frills account. So no frills account means it can just do basic services. Now RBI became increasingly aware that branchless banking is beyond just banking services of cash in, cash out. So they have what is now called as banking outlet. So out of these 20 lakh, there are 3 lakh outlets which are banking outlet, which do Jan Dhan, they do credit enablement, they do all sorts of services that typically a bank branch does. But just like no frills bank account, there was a need for no frills banking, which is your Kirana store model. The no frills banking means they just do cash in, cash out and money transfer, nothing else. Now this now is called, very recently, fresh out of bakery, it's called AEPS touch point operators. So they are just doing cash in, cash out and money transfer. They do nothing else, and they do not need that much training. This is all being done by app enabled or browser enabled, and that is 17 lakh. Out of 20 lakhs, 17 lakhs are ATOs, AEPS touch point operators, and 3 lakhs are banking outlet. Progressively, the AEPS touch point operator will become banking outlets, but there is time for, and there is aspiration, aptitude required for this, that. So to answer your question, can we make all these 20 lakh operator enabled with insurance and everything? Answer is no.
Maybe not.
How do we scale that? We'll talk about it.
Thank you. Moving on to you, Professor. So from a public goods perspective, how do you look at rural distribution, and what do you think is the single most challenge there that needs to be tackled?
I think, if you look at the rural distribution as opposed to the urban distribution, I think the basic idea is to move away from that very pipeline approach to a more ecosystem specific approach. And that really remains the same even when you talk about even pure public goods. So some of the experiences that we have had in terms of giving goods which are kind of ostensibly free, as recent as 2024, a couple of years ago, when we were trying to work with the health ministry for the distribution of the free ANC kits to women, right? And those geographies kind of which are culturally very reticent, very difficult to reach geographies where women do not want to reveal about their pregnancy because of, let's say, so many social norms around. So if you look at it from a very beneficiary perspective and lose that customer touch, then you feel that, okay, this here is a free product. We are trying to reach out to you. Why you're hiding away from that? Because the way the rational calculus is working in case of the rural geographies is kind of different from the way the public health systems have come up in a period of time. And it took us a couple of years to understand that, instead of asking, we are asking the wrong question. We're asking that why are they not using these services when we are kind of going to their door? We start asking why are they using, because some of them are actually using. So why are they using these services despite those social structures in place? And really that was a revelation, because it kind of switched our lenses from something which people have tried to understand in the voting behaviors in very old democracies. This is what we tried to bring in into the distribution of the public goods, rather than saying why people do not vote, to asking why people vote actually, because voting costs are very high as opposed to what you get from voting. So that's the same mindset we try to bring in when it comes to the public distribution. And really the answer lies in kind of identifying what many of my co-panelists are echoing, is finding those agents in your local ecosystem who can actually seal the deal for you. So the first touch point is the agent, and then the customer, and then the product. So I think if we reverse it, then we have different type of outcomes coming from. And when you intensify this further, the type of outcomes that can come from, you not only identify the agents in terms of who can actually take your message far and wide, but also in terms of take up and the scale up, which we're going to talk about, is going to be remarkably different than what we have experienced in other geographies. So yeah.
Okay, great. So I think wonderful insights. It's quite clear that doing distribution in rural areas is really about designing an ecosystem ground up, identifying the right agent who can do the necessary delivery and build the trust. I think that's more important. My next question, and I'll maybe go specific this time, is to Amrendra. जैसे जब आप start कर रहे थे, from what I remember based on our earlier conversations, you were very clear right from day one that if you have to do distribution of goods and services to farmers, it has to be an ecosystem design, and it has to be decentralized. But that's not something which sounds very scalable. And typically VCs etc. I'm sure you must have received some pushback कि यार ये क्या कर रहे हो, बहुत सारी चीजें कर रहे हो, एक चीज करो, core competency kind of argument. So I'm sure there are a lot of founders grappling with similar issues. So how did you tackle that? वो आपने कैसे उसको किया?
So I think पहले तो कि हम लोगों ने day zero पे funding नहीं लिया. It took 7-8 years. I think so. 2018 December was the first time we raised, and we started way back in 2011. So I think first of all, when we decided that we will be doing something in agri, so I think first and foremost was कि खुद ही जाके करते हैं. So we took time. I think 4 or 5 years we took time to understand actually the ecosystem, and what I was talking about कि एक गांव में अगर 100 लोग हैं तो उनका ऐसा distribution है. We understood that through directly working on the ground with the farmers initially. In 4 or 5 years we must have, I mean, we had interacted more than 15,000 farmers one to one in Bihar. We started from Bihar. So I think that was the time, and then what we realize is that while interacting with each and every farmer, right, when we go, so someone is in something, in different value chain. Someone is in, at that time, someone is needing agri input. At the same time, the same other farmer is needing something else. Someone wants to sell. So what we realize that, okay, I mean, if you want to serve everyone, then model has to be like full stack. I mean, and we could serve everyone. With that intent, basically, we realized that, okay, this is where the end-to-end services has to happen for that impact, because the industry is still working in silos, right? Someone is if selling in seeds, उसको फर्क ही नहीं पड़ता उसका आउटपुट कहाँ जा रहा है, क्या प्रोड्यूस हुआ, ठीक है, डेमो करके दिखा सकते हैं कि दिस इज आउट, बट अल्टीमेटली I mean, farmer is doing farming, ultimately पैसा कितना आ रहा है उसके अकाउंट में. This is where the end value is, right? It's not about कि at particular instant मेरा प्रोडक्ट हिट हो गया है ना, या डिसीज सॉल्व हो गया, ऐसे तो होना नहीं. अल्टीमेटली हर एक स्टेप पे उसको इंटरवेंशन है, और वहीं पे भी रियलाइज कि वी वांट टू बी एक्टिंग एट एवरी स्टेप, एंड दैट इज व्हाई यू ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड फार्मर. जो आप बोल रहे कि ट्रस्ट वाले फैक्टर है, तो उनके साथ इकोसिस्टम में, उनके साथ उनकी क्रॉप की प्लानिंग, उनकी सॉइल की प्लानिंग, वी डू दैट, आई मीन लाइन बाय लाइन, आइटम बाय आइटम, एंड दिस इज वेयर बेसिकली वी बिल्ड द ट्रस्ट. एंड देन द सेम फार्मर्स, एंड अगेन मतलब ऐसा नहीं कि डे जीरो में सोचा तो सब इंप्लीमेंट कर दिया डे जीरो पे, ऐसा था नहीं. I mean, we started with output, थोड़ा आसान था उनको ट्रस्ट बिल्ड करने के लिए, and then within the same community फार्मर खुद ही बोलने लगे, रहे आप इनपुट भी दे दो क्या, तो मैंने we started with seeds, बोले अब सीड्स देने लगे, फर्टिलाइजर भी दे दोगे क्या, बोले ठीक है फर्टिलाइजर भी दे देंगे. अब देन बोलने लगे फाइनेंशियल सर्विसेज भी दे दोगे क्या, नहीं कर देंगे. तो so ऐसा था, एंड मतलब आई थिंक फॉर अस इट्स ऑलवेज द वॉलेट साइज ऑफ द फार्मर. अल्टीमेटली अगर उसके पास 2 एकड़ का खेत है तो हमें, बिहार का फार्मर है 2 एकड़ का खेत है तो हमें 1 लाख रुपये दिखता है. कि अगर हम इस सारे वैल्यू चेन में हम इंटरवेन करेंगे, महाराष्ट्र का किसान है तो हमें 5 लाख रुपए दिखते हैं. So ultimately we ingrained ourselves, and I think, and for us I think that is acting, मतलब आप बोल रहे हो कि मतलब क्रिटिसाइज करें, पूछें, हमारे लिए
पॉजिटिव हो गया.
हमारे लिए वो वैल्यू एडिशन के काम कर रहे हैं कि कभी सीजनल नहीं है, इनपुट अच्छा नहीं चला तो आउटपुट चला गया. एट दिस सीजन वी रियलाइज दैट बारिश हो गया कहीं पे, ये हो गया. तो एंड लास्ट 14 साल से हम लोग देख ही रहे हैं, सब लोग ये बोल रहे हैं यार इस साल तो ऐसा मौसम ही नहीं देखे थे. तो 14 साल से तो यही सुन रहे हैं अपन, राइट. मतलब हो गया 15 साल से, यार ऐसा तो मौसम ही नहीं देखे थे, आज ज़्यादा हो गया, कम हो गया, एक ही ज्योग्राफी में कहीं पे बारिश हो गया, कहीं पे सूखा पड़ा. सो आई थिंक मतलब फॉर अस दैट एक्टेड लाइक मतलब बूम, मतलब ब्लेसिंग्स इटसेल्फ. मतलब ठीक है, एक नहीं चल रहा, दूसरा चल रहा है, और आप किसान को खो नहीं रहे हैं, आपका टच पॉइंट नहीं लूज हो रहा है. ऐसे क्या है, जब आप एक प्रोडक्ट और सर्विसेज दे रहे हैं, आप सीजन में एक बार जा रहे हैं, फिर अगले सीजन में आएंगे चाचा. तो सो फॉर अस इट्स लाइक कि वर्किंग क्लोजली विद द फार्मर. आई मीन सो
तो आई थिंक जो मेरे को समझ आया कि आपका जो इकोसिस्टम डिजाइन है दैट इज वेरी ग्राउंड अप, राइट. एंड वंस यू हैव एस्टैब्लिश्ड, the other players were able to see value, whether it's a fertilizer supplier or someone who's buying. So I think that is key. Moving on to you, Kishore. Again, now we'll take a slightly startup perspective because that's what the summit is really all about. If you were to look at e-commerce and looking at the next 500 million or the last mile, do you think there are still problems which are to be solved from an e-commerce perspective where startup founders can focus on, with a focus on going on to the last mile, right? I mean, some things which you think are still broken, and if a startup is able to do it, then through collaboration with Amazon, things can work better, right? I mean, I don't know. It's
So you're asking for what can startups
yes
contribute to the distribution
yes,
system
yes,
as such?
yes. Yeah, more from a rural perspective, whether it is logistics, whether it is maybe I don't know, anything else that you think is still broken for Amazon to operate efficiently and effectively.
I wouldn't call it broken. I think it's evolving, right? So how do you orchestrate the system end to end, especially in terms of selection and speed? Because speed does compete
You
with
mentioned
the
that
physical world.
the service levels are different in some of these rural pin codes.
Not the service levels, the speed of operation. Service level for me is again, hey, are you doing it 99% of the time or 98% of the time? And how are you dealing with the last 2% where it doesn't go well? One of the things that has come in across, not just here, across the globe, is you are going to balance out at some point speed with proximity to customer. Because if you want to fly everything from Delhi, yeah, maybe a cell phone, even cell phones don't make sense nowadays. But then you need to get closer and closer to the customer so that you are actually having those micro fulfillment centers or mini fulfillment centers which actually put in what is needed for that particular customer base. And as you grow to groceries and staples, it's almost absolutely necessary that you have to have local selection, otherwise it's not going to make it. The second piece, and that's where a lot of startups have also come in, where they are figuring out how to distribute them closer to the customer. For example, you go down to rural, say even Andhra Pradesh, there are some 17 or 18 brands of rice that sell, and only the local market decides which brand will sell when. And that advertisement is even very non-conventional times, like cable TV will advertise and it will start selling. Then comes how do you sell to a network of people, where you make a network and the network is ordering, right? If you go back to China, like Pinduoduo has started it, where you can form a network and start purchasing and see what happens. Well, this is one side of the story. The other side of the story where I find a lot of startups coming in is enabling the rural seller to reach to the national place, correct? So going back, if you initially looked at say 2015-16, we did have artisans do it, but artisans probably didn't have that eye or angle of an urban consumer on quality, right, or on advertising. But now you see how many brands are coming in for the same artisan work, that are actually figuring out, curating them, giving them quality inputs, giving them inputs on color and selection, sizes, etc. Something as basic as a double hemming on a fabric actually changes the quality perception across. I mean, how it serves, I'm not the specialist, but when the person looks out for it, hey, this is not stitched on both sides and hence, not there. or size and size standardization. And these are the places where getting the rural seller enabled on the same marketplace that is reached out to the world is where, I'm not even calling country, the world, is where I think the next startup opportunities are.
Yeah,
But to solve it, most of the places are in place. I mean, it's not like we need to do something different, but orchestration may be different basis the seller.
Yeah, no, wonderful. Thanks a lot. Sunil, similar question to you that, and you are mentoring, I think, a few early stage fintech financial inclusion startups. So what is the one or two suggestions that you would give to them, new entrepreneurs who are trying to do financial services for the last mile? What are the one or two opportunities that they should ride on, like the BC network you talked about? And what are one or two red flags that they need to be careful about, right? Given your rich experience.
Yeah, I think first thing is that anything that you are building, you need to build to scale. You can't build something that it is counterintuitive, because many times you build something which is only working in a particular geography and you think that that can be extrapolated. It doesn't work that way. Let me give you an example. For eKYC, we have Aadhaar biometric. And you have biometric, and now we have brought a technology called face biometric, which means using a mobile, you can see your face, and that face is compared with Aadhaar database, and you are able to do eKYC. Now it does not require any capex, so intuitively you will think that this is great scalable, but no. Why? Because if you go to Rajasthan, in Rajasthan, women they have ghungat. So you can't even have the face. And what do? Then can you make a model which is not working in Rajasthan? It doesn't work. So you have to see what works, and maybe one or two options which would typically scale across the entire one. Second thing is, while Amrendra mentioned that, he kept getting new services and new requests, but he was focused on servicing the customer. And in that process, he also diversified. I would call that as a related diversification from goods to services and to even inputs. So many times, many founders are really very fond of, मैं ये भी कर लेता हूँ, ये भी कर लेता हूँ, ये भी कर लेता हूँ, ये भी कर लेता हूँ. That many times are not related, and that's where many times I was telling someone that, what is in short supply in business is the senior management bandwidth. Everything else can be replicated. This cannot be replicated. So if senior management bandwidth cannot be replicated, you need to focus, deliver on revenue, and then move on to second one and third one. These are the two things.
So I think you are saying that it's a fine balance. Like Amrendra said, you will have to build a bundle of services, but you can't diversify too much that you're handling too many things. Right?
Related diversification.
Related, yeah. So I think last question to you, Professor. It's quite clear that rural distribution is significantly different than delivering in and doing distribution in urban centers and all that. I just wanted to understand whether, from an academic perspective, we have enough of frameworks, case studies, etc., so that it becomes easy for our next Amrendra to raise. When he goes to a VC, he says that I'm not doing something which is counterintuitive. There is some academic backing, and there is a ecosystem-based framework. And do you think there is work happening?
So, see, the academic perspective is like that of a dentist perspective, right? It comes when we really require it, actually. I would actually encourage the colleagues here. Think about some of the works that I'll come to that very quickly. I know the Palanpur study is like 45, 50 years ago now. Just a couple of villages done with Oxford and Delhi. We are still quoting it and designing new policies and products. Where is the counterpart now? Like 20 years later also, we don't have those 100 villages spread all over the India, where we have done some intense ethnography over a period of time to understand how the rural relationships are changing. So I think many of these case studies are waiting to be explored. But coming back to the question very quickly, I think the three things. One is, I think local doesn't need not necessarily be small. I think when you're thinking about a scale up, a more centralized scale up is not going to work. It's a more, because I used to work in Anand Bidirma, so I come from the land of Amul as well. So we have a lot of learning from the federated scale up actually. So when you're scaling up, looking at that 70-30% ratio, where the 70%, the invisible core remains, as part of your ensuring for the quality, how you're going to remunerate your agents and those kind of things are remaining fixed, the training, capacity building. But then the remaining, what would be the payment cycle? What would happen to the identification of agents and how would you train them? And those kind of things can kind of gerrymander to the local contexts. The second piece in this, the whole puzzle around the rural distribution is around the fact that, when you are thinking about integrating the AI with the scale-up process, I think one of the mistakes that we are doing is to confuse the customers with the beneficiaries. And that has led to a loss of agency a lot. Because most of these, the village citizens are in that beneficiary mode. And when we kind of redesign those, start using those LLMs to kind of again tell you're not eligible for this loan, or you're not, we are recommending this product to you, it's again that beneficiary mode. I think that agency, loss of agency again leads to a lot of problems that we are discussing over here. So I think the way we are going to integrate the AI for the scale up is going to be, maybe the biggest winning or the losing proposition. So.
Okay, wonderful. I think I wished we had more time to discuss AI, but we are out of time. But we can take a few questions. If there are folks in the audience, maybe you could just introduce yourself and direct your question at one of the panelists. Do a small introduction about yourself also.
Hi, thank you. That was great. I had a question.
Introduce yourself.
My name is Atreya. I'm here with my fellow co-founders, with the founders of Payday. We want to start on lending to blue-collar workers, largely in the urban area. But I had a question with respect to the next 500 million. What do you think a lot of us sitting in air-conditioned Bangalore offices not understand about trust and distribution? Because I also think of a lot of these folks as migrants and floating populations. So what do we miss about trust and distribution that you think is important for us to understand?
Yeah, shall I?
Yeah.
So I'll give you example. Today you have 700 million WhatsApp monthly active users. That means 700 million mobile with mobile data enabled. If you look at monthly active UPI, we are around 250 to 300 million. Gross may be higher, but 250 to 300. So 400 million, there is a fear that my account is probably compromised if I use it. So that where the trust and the fear, because of the fear, the trust is important. Now, where the agent plays a role, they do two things. One is they are the trustworthy because they are next to you. Second is, if anything wrong happens, they are the grievance first point, touch point. These two things, if they are taken care of, because let's say, I don't want to talk about individual names, but any large UPI app, if something wrong happens, whom do you call? Whom do you call? But if you have any agent who is doing that, he at least NPCI has now set up UDIR, which is Universal Grievance Redressal Mechanism, where the agent can log the complaint regardless of whether the customer belongs to him or not. So that is something that the scaling up for the next 400 million is solving the problem for trust, read that as access to agent, and grievance redressal, which is a universal redressal with specific timelines. Because if you don't, because many times here, if a problem is there where your account is debited and then you have not got the service and all that, it takes several weeks for you to first lodge a complaint and then get back the refund. So the grievance redressal will increase. So one of the reasons why the 300 million has not reached 700 million is if the grievance is quickly redressed, then you will have a repeat transaction. If you have repeat transactions, you will have higher monthly active users. That's the, I would say, the reason for that.
Hi everyone, my name is Supriya. um, in fact, we heard a couple of examples around distribution for women-specific needs and so on. Beyond BCs, and anytime that we speak about making women visible in distribution, the most common example is given, BCs, the big way in which we've been able to reach women. Beyond BCs, what else are you seeing working for making distribution women-centric, making distribution actually reach the women because they are homebound and we need to meet their reality?
So, look at the list of the reserved villages in India for women sarpanch. I think we are really focused on the SHGs, the producer groups in this round of the development of rural distribution. But I think one major change agent that we are missing are the women sarpanch who have a very large mandate of own source revenue, OSR. And because a lot of their funding is coming from the tied grants, the government gives them the money and they have to use it in a particular way. The OSR gives them a way out of it and conduct those developmental activities in an untied fashion. So that is tied to their next round of elections. So I think, and the panchayats are a great source of legitimacy. They're not your distributors in the strictest sense of the term, but really, if you are able to feed into the grievance redressal mechanism that many of us feel when we are going to hit the ground, I think the gram panchayats, particularly the reserved gram panchayats, which are more than 50,000 gram panchayats in India, more than that, I'm being conservative in my estimate. That's one untapped set of institutional mechanisms that is there for us to explore.
I would
There
say,
is one more solution. So I think one more aspect is that around dairy, women entrepreneurship can be created easily because it's not like agri, it's not much complex. So dairy is the one sector where the women participation can.
My question is to Mr. Amrendra. So I'm Ansh, I'm a 22-year-old agritech founder. So I started working with farmers after my 10th, at the age of 15. So it's been 5-6 years I've worked with farmers. My question is specifically to the input business that companies are, doing currently in India. So this input distributions is completely dependent on the agri retailers. And it's a 80-20 business. 80 business runs on credit, 20 is on cash. So the trust and the line of credit depends on the last mile employee that you have. And most of the time, this makes very difficult to trust the retailers, because while scaling, you don't know. There's no formal system of profiling a distributor or a retailer that how trustworthy he can be or not. So complete channel depends on the employee who is connected to that retailer. So is there any model that your company or you personally have figured out to remove this system or the line of credit which is going on? And this has been practiced by everyone. Even MNCs are doing the business in the same way. It had led to a lot of issues for them as well. So how do you see this improving or developing in future?
Sure. So I think with us, since we are engaged into financial services as well, so we provide financing services to these our channel partner, that retail outlet. 12,000 are such franchise outlet we do have. So within 6 months, yes, you rightly said that the onboarding can be done through at ground level employee and everything. But within 6 months, we used to come to know about their entire profile and maybe the banking and everything. And since we provide input, so it has to link through all credit facility through NBFCs. So there is the one point where we are very strict around that उसका सिविल खराब है, उसकी ये सारी चीजें अगर वो financing के लिए अगर eligible नहीं है that party. So I think this is where we try to reduce those मतलब उस तरह के जो parties हैं उसको हम लोग 5-6 महीने में छाड़ देते हैं. So but because there are certain system the banking follows, so we follow the same process.
Last question.
Hi, this is Adarsh. I'm a founder of Gharpe. So what we are trying to do is give out insurances and credit access to the underdeserved or underserved community. So I first spoke about financial inclusion 2.0. So I just wanted to understand a little bit more on, is there a gap in the demand, or is the demand coming up for now that we have bank accounts, the next level of financial products, or is the problem of accessibility and availability, or is the awareness an issue? So just wanted to understand a little bit about what you think about this problem.
Yeah, so I think on the plain vanilla banking services, we have already reached the point where everybody is being serviced. So this 30,000 or 50,000 or 70,000 crore cash out may not go to 2 lakh crore. It will not go. Now, what is happening is that because of this, right now, most of the first 100 million customer are being profiled by the most of the fintech. The next 200-300 million customer profiling does not exist. So the bulk of the services, so there are now tools available like account aggregator. If you have an account aggregator connectivity, you could potentially through consent get all the data about his tax, about his bank statement, about his mutual funds, and about his GST, etc., through an IT-enabled interface, which is a very, very authentic information that a bank or an NBFC can, or even an insurance company can rely upon. Because again, between the commonality between credit and insurance is both of them want premium to be paid, isn't it? EMI to be paid and premium to be paid. So this is very crucial, and that is where today the India Stack and the account aggregator framework is helping to build new solutions. Bank statement, if we can bring it to a agent level, and that through account aggregator, that's a very massive opportunity for these agents to go forward. So yeah, one is lot of startups would get benefited because credit will become, I'm talking about trade credit, I'm not talking about the consumption credit, which typically you see from Bajaj Finance for any fridge or TV buying. I'm talking about trade finance credit. So that credit would become enabled through account aggregator and this India Stack network.
Okay, I think we have come to the end of the panel discussion. Thank you very much for giving your perspectives. Can we have a round of applause for the and thank you very much for being a patient audience.